Hello everybody, Western Po Boy. These are all the conditions I would absolutely say we have to have all on the table or not discuss this at all. Alright, if we're going to consider the idea of remastering or redoing the Legend of Spyro Trilogy, say similarly or not so similarly to the Reignited Trilogy of the OG series. You know, that remake, the Reignited Trilogy. All these conditions are necessary to put on the table before going any further to the discussion. If even one of these is not mentioned, it needs to be said. It needs to be shut down completely. Fought against even. I'll go into why, but let me list these criteria. Number 1, minimal focus on graphic improvement. 2, expand the exploration and adventure elements of the trilogy. 3, for Dawn of the Dragon, improve the AI that takes control of the dragon you choose not to play as out of the 2 dragons you can play as in the game, to make the ability to fly and explore not be so damn restricted. 4, no DLC unlocking of content in the disc of either game. Any of the 3 games. None of the discs at all. None of that shit fucking ever. 5, no microtransaction cuntbaggery. None of that fraudulent shit at all. Bottom line. 6, only the mildest of polishing of the graphics at the least. You know, as part of this, I would say for Dawn of the Dragon, as part of this little criteria number 6, I would say, as part of this, give Cinder back the black scaling instead of that weird dark purple, scaling she was given in Dawn of the Dragon. Make her colors like in the first 2 games. 7, find a funnier voice actor to redo the voice of Sparks, like Tom Kenny did for the Reignited Trilogy version of the OG Spyro number 1. Okay? And then find one of the voice actresses, see if she'll redub and redo all the stuff, for all 3 games, including Dawn of the Dragon. One of the voice actresses for Cinder. 8, take the cues from what made the mobile versions of Eternal Night decent, like an Ant Dude's review of bad Spyro games with Catakaris and the TGX review of Eternal Night. Incorporate these decent aspects into consideration as a ways to improve on the first 2 games. I especially consider the positives, from the Game Boy Advance and Nintendo DS versions as sources of elements to basically partially remake Eternal Night, especially, and keep what's good about the console releases there too. Expand on it a little bit, wouldn't hurt. This is something I would say would be necessary. 9, in Dawn of the Dragon, either remove the damn necklace from Cinder's neck in it, or make it not a waste of pixels by having it on her neck, and bring back a certain scene, and I'll get into that soon. Either take it completely off, or do this next one that you'll hear about soon enough. 10, in Dawn of the Dragon, have a possible extra boss battle or something. 11, if anything is considered for DLC, only this at most, have an expansion or something that allows adventuring and side quests and such for the after the actual story's ending for Dawn of the Dragon. 12, make Ignitus die in a fucking blaze of glory like the developers intended to do. 13, add lore to Malefor to explain him, how he came to be, how he was stopped the first time around, and such. So everyone can be a little bit more invested this time around. Do that. 14. Bring back the original design of the Elder Dragons and the Chronicler for Dawn of the Dragon. Simply put, they look way better. The aesthetics were better. They just look nicer to me. I would consider this. It just matches. It's a good form of consistency between all the games. That's all. That's good. That should be reason enough. The sudden changes and all that shit were not necessary. The aesthetics it was just better. 15. Fix the plot hole in how the main characters aged up inside that crystal that Spyro trapped himself, Sparks, and Cinder in. 16. In Dawn of the Dragon. Update Spyro and Cinder to look more like Twisted Mind's drawing of them. Like Crystal Blazer said. Along with these other conditions. All these need to be together. Or not have a single one fucking missing. At all. In discussing this. 17. Develop and add the cutscenes that involve more dialogue from Voltaire and Cyril. And especially include the scene. Make it and include it to the game. Where Cinder is putting on the platinum jewelry and the neck, the stuff on her, the jewelry on her neck, as a symbol of her facing her fears of becoming Malefer's puppet again and confronting those fears. 18. Give Spyro closure about his Dragonfly adopted parents. Okay? And 19, this is the final thing. Absolutely. If you want to disincentivize piracy, use Good Old Games as the PC version of the platform. Platform for the PC version is what I'm trying to say. Also release CD-ROM, Blu-ray disc versions of the game for PC, and also then have anti-piracy measures other games had. Diablo 1, Diablo 2 before they became abandonware, and all others. From that perspective, look at them and then say and emphasize more of it. Before they, Diablo 1 was considered abandonware before they started selling it again, but polished up and software updated and released again through GOG. But whatever. And look at other already existing anti-piracy measures. As long as you do not lease the access to the IP and you let them fucking actually physically own their copies of the game, do not subvert their property rights in any damn way. Make a game they can own, the copy thereof, because they put their capital, their money, their dollar signs into buying, period. Whether it's for themselves or for their children or for their nieces or nephews or grandchildren, it still applies here. Don't subvert that from the kids. It's a shitty thing to do. Fuck you. But then again, I took the intellectually honest position about IP, and nowadays I say, fuck IP, it's an oxymoronic cancer because it is. And even more so, I'm still going to entertain this shit for the sake of argument solely. So if you want to incentivize less piracy, hear my pleas. Actually sell a game people can actually own copies of for themselves as in express their bodily property rights over that copy like they can with their own bodies. I can't emphasize this enough, use already existing anti-piracy tactics like Nintendo has done for fucking decades. Avoid this microtransaction shit. Do not use DLC to unlock parts of the disc or protections, and shit. And lastly, if you, again, use GOG for your digital platform. Why am I saying all this? Because even fucking lower animals have some bare minimum surface scratchings of a form of intelligence or understanding or instinctual driven, or if when they ain't instinctually driven, or they have just an instinctual drive that gives them a bare minimum beginnings of a first use, first ownership, first possession, first ownership. Also, I meant to say first use, first possession, first ownership property conception in practice. Territorial behaviors of a section of land and underwater territory to warn incoming animals to stay away before they get attacked or nudged off is an example, example of that. And I'm not implying at all. I'm not implying that they're sapioids blessed of the imago Dei, but this example still counts. Early hominids early humanity used this principle to establish band camps when the males are not raping the shit out of the females and clubbing them over the head to drag them into their dens to go, chimp out. This principle was practiced without understanding it in order to bridge band camps into forming tribes. Then they further used this to create the beginnings of bartering and trading between other tribes and the band camps, and that was using special looking feathers, unique shells, special looking rocks and all that kind of shit. And that exploded when they discovered obsidian and created the first markets for monies. From the ancient Greeks, the ancient Chinese, ancient East Indians, to the ancient Israelites in their time of Judges era, to ancient Eastern and Western Christianities, to the Gaelic Irish's Brehon Law, to the Enlightenment era, to the USA Founding Fathers, to the works of Molinari, Spooner, Edmund Burke, James Burnham, Aubrey Herbert, to Ludwig von Mises, to objectivists, to then Rothbard, and now the Rothbardians of today, continuing these ancient concepts and ironing them out into an exact philosophical and social scientific rigor, if I dare say, a soft science. We've ironed it out to a deductive analysis in recent decades, for God's sake. That's what we call the no proviso lock-in property principle. Why? Because if you don't differentiate between a possessor and an owner of something, it's just going to create conflict. From this simple deduction that we can see that the entire lock-in idea, without all the proviso and all this other water muddying, the idea of first use, first possess, first own follows as the only simple way of doing this. Oh, and same with the ancient precursor societies, in ancient writings. I listed that point to this direction, these ancient works, and these other societies that came to similar conclusions. Fuck me, I forgot to mention already the Caspia, Italy, the private property, anarcho-pacifistic Christian social order that survived for 386 years before they gave it up by choice. There's 3 totally different Native American cultures that figured out how to iron out their differences voluntarily and made a private property market anarchistic social order. They took this principle to ask themselves and each other what liberty means, but in their own wording and in their own languages, and founded a proto-ANCAP almost a proto-ANCAP society where Northern California is today. Yes, this has been done, folks. This principle of expressing the ability of owning a piece of land as an extension of owning your body, asking what liberty means, and the emphasis on things being consensual are the 3 greatest things that made the Enlightenment era successful and gave big questions. There have been a big question asked by philosophers, religious founders, religious leaders, law theorists, occultists, economists, law philosophers, ethicists, meta-ethicists, meta-philosophers for fucking millennia across the damn planet. That's why this expression of first use, first possess, first own, selling and trading said ownership over goods and services and resources to resolve conflict is why it's important to not subvert this shit with stuff like leasing IPs and other horror shit. I didn't say horse shit, I said horror shit. For an additional note, do not act like these other cunts, and do not act like Nintendo when it comes to abuse of the fair use shit we have. Barely have at all. Like they fucking did when the creator of that awesome Sprite Flash series, Super Mario Bros. Z. That was a disgusting thing. That was fucking criminal. Don't be fucktarded like Sega either and remove half of the fucking Sonic 3 and Knuckles story that involved the origins for the fucking Chaos and Master Emerald plots for Sonic Adventure, Sonic Adventure 2, and other games afterward. Yes, the whole Master Emeralds can take power away from the Chaos Emeralds piece came from the whole Super Emerald and Hyper Transformation mechanics and story arc, and there's also character development that made Sonic start to change a little at the end of that game. Don't don't do that either, because when you started contradicting yourself with a fucking lore, game lore at that level, and no, it was, they said, oh, we did it because we don't want to be like a certain anime. In one of the live interviews, Team Sonic did. I'm like, bitch, really? Why don't you just remove Super Transformation? Because the guy that invented that for the Sonic games used that as a homage to say to Toriyama, hey, I like what you're doing there, and made the Super Sonic transformation. Why don't you just remove that and be consistent instead of being fucking hypocritical, lying cunts to your fucking audience? And besides, the mechanics and the way it operates is nothing like Super Saiyan transformations at all. That would be like half-ass retconning. If I got a new game that started up the original Castlevania series, and I half-ass retcon the origins of the Vampire Killer in this said installment, or DC removing the man losing his wife due to crooked corporate business and political cuckery, that it made Mr. Freeze change from a subpar Silver Age villain to one of the greatest villain and anti-hero stories of all time, and then do what post-Flashpoint New 52 did and make all that a fabrication in his mind because supposedly he's just that nuts, making him worse than the Silver Age version. Don't do that either, because then you're just going to shoot yourselves and your cunts and cacks. Because, yeah, that's a bad idea. That's just a terrible thing to do. It's just a shitty idea. So let's not do any of that self-contradictory shit, okay? That's my little adage to all this, you know, after going on the rant about ownership and how fundamental it is. This little, don't contradict your fucking lore. Don't do what these asswipes did. And don't be a cunt like fucking Nintendo is about fucking abusing fair use. Which rivals Disney, by the way. Rivals Disney's corporate asses. Fuck them with Spike Clubs too. With that said, I'm done ranting. I will see you later.